Okay, great. So the next 5 questions look very much at construction contracts. So let's look at the first one. Um, so I'll also be flicking onto to a page. I think to deal with these, I think there are steps. So you're building something, you're spending money on something. So, and you're waiting for the money to come in, and you're building things in stages. So the question here is, you're building this thing. So if you like, there's a contract asset, so to speak, because you're building it. So you're debiting the contract asset. It's almost like building up inventory in a way. But the question here is, whilst you're building this thing up as well, the secondary question is, can I recognize some profit? And that recognition of profit is the next step, because we need to, and that is dependent either on an independent surveyor coming in, or based on, which is, if you like, an output method, or if you like, an input method, where we base it on the costs spent so far and whether or not we can recognize profit. So you're building this thing, contract asset. Then you have the issue of whether or not I can recognize profit. Then you have the issue of whether I've received any money so far towards this thing that I'm building. So that's the balance we're trying to keep here. So it's this question of recognition of profit. These are the 3 critical issues. So contract 1, it says that you have, here we are, contract 1 has a price of 8 million and is 40% complete. So if I go to this, if you like, here, and it tells us here that the, where is it? Here it tells us that that's right. Here we are. So let me just go to a clean page just to kind of make this easier for myself. Right, so what do we have here? So we have here, oops, that's not a very good line. We have this contract. Price is 8 million. So it tells us it is 40% complete. So far I've been building this thing. So in effect, you would recognize a contract asset as you're building it, right? 2 million, if you like, and then you're back. You've spent 2 million on this thing so far. That's what you're doing. So the next question really is really a question of how much profit can I recognize? And it tells us so far that you can recognize, well, you're 40% complete. It tells that you have spent 5 million so far. And how do I know in terms of completion? I think I have another, sorry, the total cost to make this thing is 5 million. So really what you should also check is straight away, am I still in profit overall? You are. So you're kind of, okay, that's fine, tick box. Then you come and ask the question, the total cost of making this thing will be 5 million. I spent 2 million so far. So 2 over 5 is 40%. So that works. So therefore you can recognize, if you like, 40% of profit. And therefore you will have 8 million. I mean, remember, you haven't received the 8 million, so we can't kind of do double entry for the 8 million in a way. It's just not, we don't have it yet. So we have 8 million sorry, we have 40%, if you like, of what we can, if you like, recognize. So in effect, what we're looking at here is 40% of 8 minus 5, because that's what I'm saying. The full cost will be 8. The other one will be 5. So 40% of 3 million in effect, which will give us 1.2 million. So I can recognize the total profit would have been 3, is going to be 3. I can recognize 40% of that, and that's therefore 1.2. So in effect, I can recognize 1.2, if you like, as profit right now. That's what I can do. So you built this thing, you spent 2 million so far, you can recognize 1.2, and therefore in effect you have but then the question goes on to tell us that you have also received a sum of 1.5 million. So I have bank here 1.5 million towards this contract asset in effect, which is some type of trade receivable, if you like. So in effect you have this type of thing going on. So the question here is, you are technically still owed, of course, the difference, which is 1.7 million. And there you are. So that's your answer for the first one. Yeah, so we have 1.7. What should be recorded in the current assets? 1.7 million. right? Great. Let's look at the second contract. Second contract is a bit, and again, like I say, interesting in that it says here that contract 2 has a price of 7 and is 60% complete. Due to rising raw materials, the contract 2 is now estimated to be 9 million. So we have a problem straight away. So this is the first test. Here it was okay because it was still, we could see that we were going to have a profit overall. So here we're going to have a loss. And the rule says, or the standard says, that you must recognize the full loss straight away. That's what you have to do. So in terms of recognizing that straight away, I mean, in effect, in a way, they're almost asking you to sort of say, well, the loss has to be 2 million. And if you're going to recognize revenue of 60% of 7 million, of 4.2, then therefore, unfortunately, your cost of sales will be 6.2 million, because you must recognize that full loss. But it's still very much based on the level of completion, if you like, is the easy. I mean, we were doing the same thing over here in effect, weren't we? When we said if you do 60% of 8, you will get, sorry, if you do 40% of 8, you will get 40% of 8, you will get 3.2. If you do 40% of 5, you will get 2. So we recognize the profit of 1.2. That's what we did, right? That's exactly what we did here. Same thing here. We're recognizing this, but we must recognize a loss of 2. And so that's how we arrive at the cost of sales. So that's the way we get there. So yes, and that's it. So that's the cost of sales for that. And that was therefore 6.2 million there. I mean, there is some more double entry to it, to be fair, because as you can imagine, it doesn't just happen overnight. So you probably were recognizing 60% of the initial cost. We just don't know what the initial cost was. I don't know. Do you see what I mean? In reality and in practice, imagine it had initially been 5. So you'd have done 60% of 5 million and recognized 3, and then you found this out. So you'd put through another journal to expense that, so to speak, to get it up to 6.2. Anyway, that's the kind of theory thinking. It's the same principle. Okay, great. So here, what should be recorded in revenue in contract 3? So contract 3, this says we don't know, we can't measure progress. If you can't measure progress, as soon as you see I can't measure progress, you can only ever record revenue to match the costs incurred to date. That's it. There's nothing. You can't do any percentages. So your answer becomes C. Let's look at D. Which of the following statements best describe the contracts in this scenario? These are all contracts that are satisfied over time. Right? They're all contracts that are satisfied over time. Right, and here, what we see here is that this is you've received 5 million, and you can only recognize commission of 1 million. That's what they're saying as, if you like, as revenue. So this is not your trade. You're just purely recognizing commission of 20 million. So in effect, your revenue consists purely of commission. You can recognize income of 1 million. Really, you shouldn't. It says 4 million should be recognized in cost of sales. No, if you do that, then you're recognizing the 4 million as part of your trade. This is not your trade. So in effect, you're thinking, if that's your revenue, cost of sales 4 million, and therefore 1 million. No, this is not your trade. So it's not this one. 4 million should be held in trade payables. I mean, it's not your money. You're literally just holding it to transfer it onwards. So the answer here is C. Great, and that's 21 to 25.